The station-wide emergency klaxon died mid-wail as Security Chief Zillax burst through the cafeteria doors, weapon drawn, only to find a human woman in a flour-dusted apron casually flipping what could only be described as a biological weapon on a heated surface. Behind her, 17 galactic ambassadors were experiencing their first taste sensations in recorded history, and 3 of them were crying. "Step away from the cooking apparatus immediately," Zillax's translator crackled with urgency. "You are in violation of the Convention of Sensory Neutrality, the Blandness Accords, and..." He consulted his datapad with one lower appendage while keeping his weapon trained on her, "the Treaty of Flavorless Sustenance." The human looked up, spatula in hand, genuinely confused. "I'm sorry, what?" According to YouTube analytics, 99.6% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. "I'm just making breakfast." "Breakfast?" The word came out as a strangled hiss. Behind him, the Vaporous Collective, a species that hadn't manifested physical form in 40,000 years, had somehow coalesced into a shimmering entity hovering near the serving counter, drawn by what the humans called bacon. Emma Johnson, cargo inventory specialist and absolutely not a cafeteria worker, had woken up early on her second day at Diplomatic Station Kepler 7 with a simple problem. She was hungry. The station's commissary wouldn't open for another 2 hours, so she'd done what any reasonable person would do. Found the cafeteria kitchen, noticed it was empty, and made herself some eggs. Maybe some bacon, possibly pancakes, because she'd found something that looked like flour. She had not anticipated causing an interstellar incident. "Look," Emma said, turning down the heat on what Zillax's scanner identified as a thermal danger zone. "I don't know what conventions you're talking about, but nobody's actually hurt, right? These folks seem pretty happy." She gestured with the spatula toward Ambassador Vexthul of the Silicon Collective, who was making sounds that the translator kept rendering as transcendent experience beyond mortal comprehension, while shoving something called French toast into their crystalline face equivalent. "Happy?" Zillax's 3 eyes widened in horror. "The crystalline delegation hasn't experienced sensory input since the flavor wars of the Third Age. You've ended 40 millennia of sensory peace." "The what wars?" Station Commander Kylthos materialized in the doorway, his prestigious diplomatic sash askew, his face displaying what Emma was learning to recognize as the alien equivalent of barely controlled panic. "Someone explain to me," he said with dangerous calm, "why my medical bay is treating flavor shock syndrome, why the Vaporous Collective has a body, and why—" He stopped, really looking at Emma for the first time. "You are not Coordinator Simba." "Who's Coordinator Simba?" Emma asked. "The new cafeteria administrator we hired, the one scheduled to arrive today to oversee the nutritional paste distribution." Emma laughed. She couldn't help it. "You thought I was the cafeteria lady? Dude, I count boxes. I'm in cargo inventory. I just wanted some eggs." The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Ambassador Lirana of the Scent Blind Collective, asking in a trembling voice, Could I have more of the crispy meat strips?" "You want more bacon?" Emma looked at Kael'thas. "Is that cool, or—" "Absolutely not." Zillax stepped forward. "Commander, we must shut this down immediately. The diplomatic implications are currently being discussed by 17 ambassadors who are experiencing joy for the first time in their lives," Kael'thas interrupted, and something in his voice had changed. He was staring at the cafeteria with an expression Emma couldn't quite read. "Security Chief, how many formal complaints have we received? 7 demands for arrest, 3 calls for immediate trial, and—" Zillax checked his datapad again. 42 requests for whatever the human is making. Emma snorted. "It's just breakfast food, guys. Scrambled eggs, bacon, pancakes, basic stuff." "Basic," Kael'thas repeated slowly. "You're telling me that all humans can do this?" "Well, yeah. I mean, not everyone's a great cook, but most people know how to make breakfast. It's like What you eat in the morning. She looked around at their blank expressions. You guys do eat in the morning, right? We consume nutritional paste at designated intervals, Zilak said stiffly. Optimized for caloric and vitamin content, no flavor profile, as mandated by galactic treaty for the past 10,000 years. Emma blinked. You banned taste? On purpose? The flavor wars nearly destroyed half the known galaxy, Kael'thas said quietly. Species went to war over whose cuisine was superior. Entire planets were scorched over disagreements about seasoning. The great chefs became warlords. It was decided that the only path to peace was absolute sensory neutrality in all food. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard, Emma said. She looked at the aliens crowded around her serving station, many of them experiencing flavors for the first time, some of them weeping openly. Ambassador Vexithul was hugging Ambassador Jataro, two species that supposedly hadn't spoken in 300 years, bonding over their shared discovery of maple syrup. Okay, Emma said, making a decision. Who else wants breakfast? Ms. Johnson, Kael'thas started. Emma, and look, I don't know your treaties or your wars or whatever, but I know that food brings people together. It's like one of the most basic human things. We bond over meals, we celebrate with food, we comfort each other with cooking. She started cracking more eggs. So either arrest me for making scrambled eggs, or let me feed these people who clearly want to eat something that doesn't taste like cardboard. Zilax looked at Kael'thas. Kael'thas looked at the assembled ambassadors, many of whom were now staring at Emma with expressions of desperate hope. He looked at his datapad where requests for human food were increasing by the second. Continue, he said finally. But Ms. Johnson, you must understand, this changes everything. Emma just shrugged and started whisking eggs. If you say so. I'm just cooking. Over the next 2 hours, Emma Johnson's impromptu breakfast service became something unprecedented in galactic diplomatic history. The cafeteria filled beyond capacity. Ambassadors who hadn't left their quarters in years emerged to taste what the humans called waffles. Species with completely different biochemistries lined up, and Emma modified recipes on the fly. Dairy-free pancakes for the lactose-incompatible, crystalline-safe bacon for the silicon-based lifeforms, temperature-adjusted coffee for those who metabolize differently. And they talked. They actually talked to each other. Ambassador Dirax of the Methane Collective found himself in conversation with Ambassador Talana of the Oxygen Coalition, species that had been in a Cold War for 600 years, both of them bonding over their mutual amazement at something Emma called hash browns. The Vaporous Collective, still maintaining physical form purely through determination and the power of bacon, was discussing trade agreements with the crystalline delegation between bites of cinnamon rolls. Emma worked the kitchen like she'd been doing it her whole life, which, in a way, she had. Cooking for her family, for friends, for herself. It was just food, it was just breakfast. But watching these aliens, many of them meeting each other's eyes for the first time in centuries, sharing meals, laughing at the strangeness of it all, she was starting to understand why Kael'thas had looked so stunned. You're solving problems we couldn't fix in 40 years, Zelak said quietly, appearing at her elbow. He'd holstered his weapon an hour ago and had been helping her wash dishes. The methane-oxygen conflict, the silicon-carbon divide, the vaporous isolation, they're all just talking. They're eating together, Emma corrected, flipping another batch of pancakes. There's a difference. Food isn't just fuel. It's culture, memory, comfort, joy. It's how we connect. She paused. You guys really gave all that up? We thought we had to. He watched Ambassador Vexthul try to teach Ambassador Jataro how to properly use what Emma called a fork. The flavor wars were brutal, Emma, species defining themselves by their cuisine, going to war to prove culinary superiority. Millions died, so we eliminated the variable entirely. But you eliminated connection too, Emma said softly. No wonder you couldn't solve anything. You were trying to negotiate without ever actually breaking bread together. An emergency council session was called 3 hours into what was now being termed the breakfast incident. Emma was summoned to explain herself before the full diplomatic assembly. She showed up still wearing her apron, smelling like butter and cinnamon, completely unintimidated by the 200 galactic representatives staring at her from their various species-appropriate seating arrangements. Ms. Johnson, the council speaker, a being of pure energy named Korvax, began formally, "You stand accused of violating 17 treaties, 3 accords, and the fundamental principles of diplomatic sensory neutrality. How do you plead?" "Guilty, I guess," Emma said. "But in my defense, I didn't know about any of those treaties, and also, nobody actually got hurt. Actually, everybody seems pretty happy." "That is precisely the problem," Korvax said, but there was something odd in their tone. "You have introduced a variable we spent millennia eliminating. You have reopened questions we thought settled. You have made us remember what we sacrificed." "Then maybe," Emma said carefully, "you sacrificed the wrong thing." The chamber erupted in argument. Half the ambassadors shouted in agreement, the other half in outrage. Emma just stood there, waiting for them to tire themselves out, which took about 20 minutes. Finally, Ambassador Vexthul rose, their crystalline form refracting the chamber lights. "I wish to speak." The room fell silent. The Silicon Collective rarely spoke at council sessions, preferring to observe. "For 40,000 years, I have existed in sensory neutrality. I thought it was peace." They paused. "This morning, I experienced what the human calls flavor. And for the first time in 40,000 years, I also experienced joy, true joy. Not contentment, not mere existence. Joy. I also," Ambassador Lirana stood, "wish to speak. My species eliminated our sense of smell during the flavor wars. We thought it made us objective, neutral. This morning I smelled cinnamon, and I wept because I remembered what we lost." One by one, ambassadors stood, each of them sharing their experience of Emma's breakfast, each of them realizing that in eliminating sensory pleasure, they had eliminated something essential to connection, to culture, to actual peace. "We didn't end the flavor wars," Ambassador Dirac said finally. "We just stopped living." Kael'thas rose last. "I propose," he said carefully, "an emergency vote to suspend the Convention of Sensory Neutrality, temporarily, for a trial period, to assess whether—" he looked at Emma, "whether we gave up something we shouldn't have." The vote was closer than Emma expected, but it passed. "Ms. Johnson," Korvax said formally, "the Council wishes to appoint you as culinary cultural liaison with full diplomatic immunity and a salary of—" They named a figure that made Emma's eyes widen. She laughed. "That's like 3 times what I make now." "You find this insufficient?" "No, Emma shook her head. "Look, I appreciate it, but I'm a cargo inventory specialist. I count boxes. That's my actual job. I like my job. This was just me making breakfast because I was hungry." The silence was profound. "You wish to maintain your current position?" Zilax asked slowly. "A position of lower status, lower pay, when offered diplomatic rank." "It's not lower status, it's just different," Emma said. "Someone needs to count the cargo. Someone needs to make sure medical supplies are tracked and food shipments are organized and equipment is properly logged. That's important work. This," she gestured around the council chamber, "this is just cooking. It's something I do anyway. Why would I give up my actual job for it?" The alien stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "I tell you what," Emma said, "I'll cook for your peace summit next week. I'll help you guys figure out this whole food thing, but I'm doing it in addition to my regular job, not instead of it." "Deal?" They agreed, mostly because they had no framework for understanding a human who would turn down status elevation. Emma was appointed the first being in station history to hold 2 simultaneous positions. She seemed completely unbothered by this historic precedent. The Peace Summit 3 weeks later was the most successful diplomatic gathering in galactic history. 7 treaties were signed, 4 trade agreements finalized, and a 70-year territorial dispute resolved, all over Emma's lasagna dinner. The breakthrough came during dessert, something Emma called tiramisu, when the previously warring factions of the Carbon Coalition realized they both loved coffee and maybe, just maybe, they could share the disputed coffee plant equivalent worlds. Emma watched from the kitchen, pleased but not surprised. Food brings people together, she'd told Kael'thas earlier. Always has, always will. The Emma protocol was implemented station-wide within a month. Designated meal-sharing spaces, cultural food exchanges, and cooking classes. Other stations immediately requested human culinary consultants. The Convention of Sensory Neutrality was officially repealed after 10,000 years. The flavor wars did not reignite. Instead, species began sharing recipes. Emma went back to counting boxes. Zilax found her in Cargo Bay 7 3 weeks after the summit, clipboard in hand, methodically working through a shipment of medical supplies. She was eating a cookie while she worked, seemingly content with the mundane task of inventory management. "The Council wishes you to attend a ceremonial recognition," he said formally. "They plan to name you honorary architect of the new culinary age." "Is it during my shift? Because I'm behind on the pharmaceutical count. That shipment from Andromeda Station came in weird, and I need to verify everything before I sign off." Zilax stared at her. Truly, humans were incomprehensible. She had revolutionized galactic diplomacy, ended 10,000 years of sensory deprivation, and possibly prevented future wars. And she was worried about counting medicine boxes. "I could reschedule your shift," he offered. "Nah, it's fine. Just tell them I appreciate it." "But I'm working." Emma marked something on her clipboard. "Oh, hey, you want a cookie? I made extras." She held out a container of what his scanner identified as chocolate chip cookies. Zilax had learned about chocolate 3 weeks ago and was still recovering from the revelation. He took one. "These are extraordinary," he said after a bite. "Yeah, they're pretty good. My grandma's recipe." Emma went back to counting. Box 847 of 2,200. Ugh, this is going to take all day. Zilax ate his cookie in silence, watching her work. Humans, he had learned, did not see tasks as beneath them. They did not equate importance with status. They simply did what needed doing, whether that was revolutionizing galactic diplomacy or counting boxes in a cargo bay. "Emma," he said finally, "may I ask you something?" "Sure," she said, not looking up from her clipboard. "Why do you prefer this?" He gestured around the cargo bay. "This work over the prestige of your culinary position?" Emma paused, considering. "Because this matters too," she said finally. "Someone needs to make sure the medicines get where they're going. Someone needs to verify the equipment counts. Just because it's not flashy doesn't mean it's not important." She looked at him and smiled. "Besides, I like organizing things. It's satisfying. The cooking thing is fun, but this is my actual job, you know?" Zilax did not know, but he was beginning to understand that this, perhaps, was the real human secret. Not their ability to cook or fight or endure or any of the other things that made them remarkable. It was their ability to find value in everything. To see importance in the mundane. To revolutionize the galaxy and then go back to counting boxes because someone had to do it. "You're going to accidentally revolutionize something else, aren't you?" he asked. Emma laughed. "God, I hope not. I just want to finish this inventory count." She paused. "Though I was thinking, this storage system is really inefficient. If we reorganized by expiration date instead of category, we could reduce waste by like 30%. You think anyone would mind if I restructured the whole cargo bay?" Zilax closed his eyes. "Please, do not reorganize our cargo systems." "Why not?" "Because you'll make them too efficient, and we'll have to restructure every cargo bay on every station in the fleet, and it will be a whole thing." "Okay, but hear me out." The conversation was interrupted by her communicator chiming. "Emma Johnson to diplomatic sector, please. We're having an emergency with the sulfur-based delegation, and they're requesting your carbonara recipe." Emma sighed. the long-suffering sigh of someone who just wanted to do her job. Can it wait? I'm on box 847 of 20-200. It's considered urgent, Ms. Johnson. Fine. Tell them I'll be there in 20 minutes. She turned to Zelax. Can you watch my count? Just make sure nobody moves anything. I'll be right back. She jogged out of the cargo bay, still holding her clipboard, cookie crumbs on her work shirt. Zelax stood alone among the carefully counted boxes, eating his grandmother recipe cookie, and wondered what other impossible things humans did casually. What other paradigms they would shatter without meaning to. What other treaties they would violate simply by being themselves. He hoped desperately that they never asked Emma about human conflict resolution, or human engineering, or human anything, really. The galaxy, he suspected, was not ready for what humans considered basic stuff. From the cargo bay entrance, he heard Emma's voice echoing down the corridor. Seriously, though, carbonara is just pasta, eggs, cheese, and bacon. How is this an emergency? Zelax finished his cookie and began helping count the boxes. Someone had to. And as Emma had taught him, every task mattered, even the mundane ones, especially the mundane ones.